All right, good morning, everyone. If you're streaming with us, apologies for being so late. It's just one of those days, but here we are. We will be in 1 Samuel. We're going to finish up chapter 6, which not in terms of finishing up, but just 6 into 7. And then we'll get in chapter 7 and kind of lead up to chapter 8 and what happens there. An idea of what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. Today's the 19th, so next week we will, the 26th and the 2nd of November, we will be in here. The 9th, we will not have a class because that will be our youth rally weekend, and so we're going to have still haven't decided on the times. I don't think 10:30 works, but we'll figure that out. But we will not have class on the 9th of November in here. And then starting November the 16th, Rob is going to start a class in here on a different topic. So yeah, the 16th. So we will be in here for 2 more Sundays. The 9th is the youth rally weekend, so there's no class. And then the 16th, Rob will be in here teaching a class. So there we go. All right, 1 Samuel chapter 6. We find the ark being returned back to Beth Shemesh. And in verse 19, some men opening it. As a result, they died. And Israel mourned because of that happening. And then the very end of chapter 6, this statement that is made. So they sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kiriath-Jearim, saying, "The Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up to you." And so the men, chapter 7 of Kiriath-Jearim, came and looked up the ark of the Lord, or the ark of Yahweh, and brought it to the house of Abinadab on the hill. And they consecrated his son Eleazar to have charge of the ark of Yahweh. And from the day that the ark was lodged at Kiriath-Jearim, a long time passed. How long was it? 20 years. And all the house of Israel lamented after the Lord. And Samuel said to the house of Israel, "If you are returning to Yahweh with all of your heart, then put away what? Put away the foreign gods. Put away the Ashereth, probably the Baal from among you, and direct your heart to Yahweh. Serve him only, and he will deliver you out of the hands of the Philistines." And so the people of Israel put away the Baals and the Ashereth, and they served Yahweh only. And you kind of have to wonder, at least I do, and I doubt this was a one session, one moment, one day, that this was a process that took place. Because obviously the defeats they had in battle were not only were because of this problem. And even when they brought the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark of God, to the battle, they lost much worse. And so once they got the Ark back to Kiriath-Jearim, Samuel tells them, this is what makes you successful. This is what wins battles. It's not, and I want you to notice, and I think it's very interesting, that the Ark is not what wins battles. The Ark is and maybe that's a good conversation to have. Why did God, both with the temple, but specifically the Ark, why make the Ark? Because obviously God didn't need the Ark. Why create the Ark as well as the temple itself? What was the purpose of it?
So the Israelites would remember.
Okay.
So that was the 10 Commandments.
Right.
things that were important to their history as a nation.
Okay. Okay. Very true. Very true. Any other thoughts? Why an ark?
Everything that God did and everything that He instituted among men, had a type, an anti-type, if you will, in heaven. So everything that He created here on earth was a shadow of what was actually in heaven.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so it was for showing, the coming of the Christ, the coming of the new covenant. That would, He would now be our ark, if you will.
Right. Right.
He carries the law of the Lord.
Right. Right.
So, to me, it's just, it's reflective of what is already in heaven.
Okay. What's already
God
there?
was giving to men to show them, so they had something they could see.
Right. Right. A representation of something that already exists. Right. And maybe this question you've never asked: why the tabernacle? Why the ark? Why the Holy of Holies? After Israel leaves Egypt and they get to Sinai, and you have this whole incident, this whole scene happening around Sinai, and then you have after the golden calf, and I don't mean like chronology, but just in terms of chapter-wise, you have 12 chapters, I think it is, that go over the tabernacle as a whole, like all of it, the priests, what they wear, the music inside, how it's set up, all of it. Why do that? What do you think? Why the tabernacle? Why the ark?
God's Spirit and those who are involved in true worship must worship in spirit and in truth. And that tabernacle was the place for national worship.
Okay.
All of the sacrifices. Aaron and his sons were priests.
Right.
No man takes the priesthood unto himself.
Right.
God the Father.
Right.
And so I think, there's a great deal of detail regarding Moses was told exactly how everything in the tabernacle and the tabernacle itself was supposed to be built, and he was expected to follow that pattern exactly.
Exactly.
It was important to God that these things be exactly right.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the reasons I asked the question, because I think it's very interesting that God shared in Exodus, I want to be with my people. I want to exist with my people. Now, can God exist with his people without a temple, without a tabernacle, without an ark? And he could. Was he there with them during the Egyptian plagues? Yeah, he was. So there's this physical representation of God. And many of the nations had temples. I mean, lots of other nations have temples where their God dwells. In fact, how do we in fact know that? When you go to chapter 5 and 6, where was Dagon located? Temple that the Philistines made for him. Now, one of the uniquenesses about the temple that they had before they got to Canaan was it was mobile, which is, if you kind of can connect the dots. I know I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I think it's very interesting for us to think through this as it relates to the ark. That if you consider before they get to Canaan and have a permanent one later, the tabernacle is mobile. So they can pick this thing up and they can move it. You get to John 1, 14 and 18, the Word became flesh and tabernacled, the dwelt, lived, tented among us. And so the word that created the world, the word in Hebrews that maintains and sustains all things, Colossians talks about that too, tabernacled how? How did he tabernacle among us? The word of God. In flesh. His flesh was the tabernacle that we find throughout the wilderness, which was a physical object. Yeah.
You know, there's another aspect of this too, both the ark and the tabernacle and the temple, that it showed the Israelites needed to know that God was holy. And it's very difficult to, I mean, that's an abstract concept.
Very,
God's
very.
holy. Well, what does that mean? Well, they saw it on Mount Sinai.
Yeah,
as an example.
yeah.
They saw it when, the ark, stumbled and Uzzah tried to stop it. So they had this visceral, understanding, appreciation of how God was holy. And I think God needed to show the Israelites that. I think that they needed to have something that demonstrated God's holiness and His power.
Yeah.
So the Holy of Holies is tabernacle, temple,
Yeah.
covenant,
Yeah, even 3 different sections, if you will. Yeah, yeah. So again, I find this stuff very interesting because whenever you are in Egypt, did the Israelites, before they were Israelites, if you will, before they were a nation, before Sinai, did they experience other gods? And they did. Absolutely they did. And even before the plague started, Egypt, at least what it is proclaimed, not proclaimed, but, the idea is they had a God for everything. The Nile they had a God for the Nile. Everything that they dealt with in those plagues, there was a God for. So once they get out in the wilderness, and there's some really, really interesting stuff that if you kind of slow down as you're reading through the Exodus story before they leave, Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, Yahweh is asking you to let his people go. And you remember one of the reasons for that? Not just to give them freedom.
Go into the wilderness to worship.
Yeah. I mean, how cool is that? That he says, I want, and in fact, the desire wasn't to let them go. Would you let them take like a day in the wilderness to worship me? And then, because it wasn't, if I remember right, it wasn't to leave and go. It was, let them take some time, worship me, and then come back. Of course, Pharaoh says no to that because they probably, in his mind, they wouldn't come back. So once they get out in the wilderness and they've got all these gods in their mind, Yahweh wants them to know that I am the God that took you out of Egypt. And we find this happening multiple times in the Old Testament where Moses tells Israel via God's voice, I am the Elohim, I am the Yahweh that took you out of Egypt. So I want you to see me as holy, set apart, different. I'm not like the gods of Egypt. And then you get to Sinai, and you have this massive scene with the thunder and the lightning and the voice that comes. And do you remember how the people responded to all of that? They're terrified. And he said, Moses, you and Aaron do your thing. We're gonna have like 5 miles between us and that mountain. We don't want to have anything to do with that mountain. Why? Because they might die. So this God, because they had experienced other ones in most of their upbringings, right? From the time they were young till the time they were older, they experienced other gods. This God is to be holy, separate, different. He is unique. He's not like the other gods. And so now you have this tabernacle where it is a mobile temple where God is going to dwell with you. Everywhere you go, this is your visual of who God is. And one other quick point. How do we know that Israel wanted a visible representation of their God? And I'm not trying to be coy. You guys know the answer. What happens is Moses is coming down the mountain the first time. They had made a god out of gold that they got from Egypt. So the people are like, hey, we want to make a god. And so Aaron says what? Everybody give me all your gold. He fashions a god. And this may be one of those things that only is interesting in my brain. But the word fashion, he fashioned a calf. In terms of built, is the same word used in Genesis 2. Man, it's not good that man be alone. So God fashioned the woman out of man. So Aaron fashioned a calf out of the gold that they gave him. And if you, as you continue to read, they literally say, we are going to have tomorrow a festival for, do you remember who it says? For Yahweh. So what they wanted was their own representation of Yahweh that took them out of Egypt, but we wanted to make it look like we want it to look, as opposed to what God was setting up for them. Anyway, that got a little bit into the weeds, but I think those things, if we try and understand the Israelites, their mindset. So after Moses goes back up, and then we have 12 chapters of what the tabernacle is going to look like, where God is going to dwell within the Holy of Holies, that only the priest, the high priest, could go into in order to sacrifice, was the ark. And the ark was this gold box, if you will, with these gold poles that only the priest could carry. And with on top of this was what? And you guys know the answer. The mercy seat. What an interesting name, huh? The mercy seat. And then what was covering the mercy seat? 2 cherubim where their wings touched. So as you walk in, which I've always found this interesting too, is unless they're moving, if it's in the tabernacle, who could see the Ark of the Covenant? Only the high priest. Once a year. So this physical representation that the people know is in there, not only is God like generally with it, but God's presence is there as those sacrifices are made. So with this ark and multiple generations happening since it started, since they got into Canaan, you know, when they turn to worship other gods and they bring the ark, we can worship other gods, but we're going to bring the ark to help us, and it gets worse. Then it comes back to Kiriath Jearim. And so this is what Samuel says to them, to the house of Israel. Wow, that's interesting. If you are returning to Yahweh with what? All of your heart. And we do know that the, what do you call it? The 2 greatest commands. Love the Lord with all of your heart. Love your neighbor as yourself. Then put away the foreign gods and the Ashereth from among you, and direct your heart to Yahweh and serve him only. In other words, consecrate him. Make him holy. And what is the result of you making Yahweh holy, consecrated, set apart, unique, different? What is going to be the result of that here? God will deliver you from the Philistines. So, at least in their mind, so why did we lose both battles? Because Yahweh is one of many. We have not consecrated him. We have not made him holy. And so the people of Israel put away the Baals and the Ashereth, and they served Yahweh only. Yeah. No, good point. Good point. He's already there. Are you recognizing him as such? Yeah. No, that's a great point. And in fact, no, I think that's really interesting, because we don't make God holy, do we? God is already what? He's already who he is. He's already Yahweh. So you need to recognize him as such and do not put the Baals and the Asherahs and the other god in league with him. He is set apart. He is Yahweh already. So if you're going to return to Yahweh, verse 3, with all your heart. In other words, fully see him as Yahweh. And so the people did that. They put away the Baals and the Asherah, and they served Yahweh only. So Samuel said, gather all of Israel at Mizpah, and I will pray to Yahweh for you. And so they gathered at Mizpah and drew water and poured it out before Yahweh and fasted on that day and said there, we have sinned against Yahweh. Samuel judged the people of Israel at Mizpah. And now when the Philistines heard that the people of Israel had gathered at Mizpah, the lords of the Philistines went up against Israel. When the people have heard it, they were afraid of the Philistines. The people of Israel said to Samuel, do not cease to cry out to Yahweh, our God, our Elohim, for us, that they may save us from the hand of the Philistines. Now, I don't think I'm reading too much into this, because a lot of this stuff, I don't know, I have found over the decades that there's a lot of things that we read it for the story. But notice here that they have put away their Baal and Ashereth. They are serving Yahweh only. But then they find out that the Philistines are coming after them because they have done this with Yahweh. And so whenever they find out, in verse 3, Samuel just told them, if you will give yourselves fully to Yahweh as your God, what will God do for you? Specifically here, he'll deliver you from the hands of Philistines. You'll win. You'll be fine. And yet when they find out the Philistines are coming after them and they had sinned against Yahweh, what was their response? They freaked out. Yeah.
It's something here too, that's kind of interesting. The Philistines were going at them because they gathered.
At Mizpah, yeah.
They didn't understand why they gathered.
Yeah. As a
Funny that they
yeah. Well, that's what I find is cool. There's so many levels to this, because even with what happened at the Temple of Dagon, if you do a scorecard of Israel going up against the Philistines in this time period, who might win battle number 3? The Philistines. And in fact, they won the first one by 4,000. They won the second one by a lot. So even though what happened at the temple of Dagon, and if you remember, the priest, I think it was the priest, let's see, what was that, chapter 5, the end of chapter 5? Let's see, where is that? So they sent the ark back to Israel, and they said if it goes in this direction, then Yahweh did it. If it goes in this direction, then it just happened. So it's very possible that they chose to go after Israel because maybe it just happened. And maybe what happened in the Temple of Dagon was a fluke, even though they still wouldn't walk over the threshold. So they get ready to go after Israel. And Israel's response to Samuel is what? Keep praying. Do not stop asking Yahweh to help us and save us from the hand of the Philistines. And so, verse 9, Samuel took a nursing lamb and offered it as a whole burnt offering to Yahweh. Samuel cried out to Yahweh for Israel, and Yahweh answered him. As Samuel was offering up the burnt offering, the Philistines drew near to attack Israel, but Yahweh thundered with a mighty sound that day against the Philistines, threw them into confusion, and they were defeated before Israel. The men of Israel went out from Mizpah and pursued the Philistines and struck them as far as below Bethkar. And then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shin and called its name Ebenezer. And this is kind of a good place to end. For he said, till now Yahweh has helped us. Do you guys remember what the name of Ebenezer means? Stone of help. And if you remember, the word Azer is also used in Genesis 1, that the woman is to be a helper to man. And the word helper there, Azer, is not like, I don't know, if a guy's working on something, hey, would you hand me some pliers? Or I need help with this. It's something done for you that you can't do for yourself. It is I don't know. I think that's why I struggle with the word helper, because we think about our kids being helpers for us or whatever. It is a strong need. It is, I think the example I used last time is, if I have electrical needs at my house, I'm going to call James. Not because James is my helper. James can do stuff that I can't do. I don't know. He's got skills I don't have. He's going to help me. And this is the word for Ebenezer, a stone of help. God is going to do something for you that you can't do for yourself. So how much does God do for us that we cannot do for ourselves? What's the answer to that? Yeah, pretty much everything, right? So this idea of a stone of help, it's not like, oh God, the Philistines are coming, we need your help. Israel realized that we need God for everything. God is God. Until now, the Lord has helped us, Ebenezer. So the Philistines were subdued and did not again enter the territory of Israel. The hand of Yahweh was against the Philistines all the days of Samuel. And the cities that the Philistines had taken from Israel were all restored to them. There was peace also between Israel and the Amorites, etc. So we will actually begin there next Sunday and look at some really cool stuff there also. And then, so remember, for those of you that are both streaming and 26th and the 2nd, we will be in here for class. 9th, we will not. And the 16th, Rob will be in here teaching. All right, thanks for your comments.